Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is November the 6th, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the West Shore Photography Club. We have a great presentation for you this evening, but just a couple orders of business before we get to that. Number one, you can see my new West Shore Photography Club t-shirt as purchased through the Fine Art Photography in Lemoyne. And you can order yours, pick them up within, like a week or so when they get them in. And they have t-shirts like this, various colors, this design, and sweatshirt. And Rod Frazier and I wore our sweatshirts to the Mechanicsburg photo shoot on Friday to make ourselves known. Okay, no meeting next week. Our next regular meeting will be on Monday, November the 20th. It's an image review. Mike Donovan will be conducting the review, and there is a theme. Okay, reflections. So that shouldn't be too tough, but you have 2 weeks to shoot, or almost 2 weeks. The deadline, of course, is midnight on Wednesday prior to the meeting. So reflections, image review, November the 20th. Images due upload to the website the Wednesday before that. Okay, let's turn it over to Joe for announcements about trips, and he'll introduce tonight's guest speaker.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. We had a couple of trips since our last meeting. Our first one went to the historical Harrisburg Cemetery. And Elaine, are you on? Can you give an update on that particular trip, please?
I'd be happy to, Joe. It was really a wonderful trip. It's one of the best that I've been on in a while. The first time I'd been there, it was on a scouting trip with Joe and Mark. And we did quite a bit of looking around at that trip as well. But on this particular day, when we had the actual meeting, we had wonderful weather. It was as warm as could be, warm enough to walk without a jacket, but at the same time, we were surrounded by a beautiful backdrop of fall color everywhere we went. The caretaker, David, was a wonderful host. He gave us a brief orientation to the history of the cemetery, as well as kind of a layout of the land. And best part was he gave us a personal tour guide, Mr. Beebe, the cemetery cat, who led us around like he owned the place and pointed out his favorite headstones and monuments, and occasionally would pose on them for us so we get a few portrait shots of him. The only thing we were missing really was a little bit of fog in the morning, because it would have been a great opportunity to get some spooky shots just before Halloween. But hey, we couldn't ask for everything. It was a beautiful day. The light was not too harsh. There were some beautiful pools of light, as Mike Donovan has coined that phrase, that just lent a beautiful golden glow to many of the tombstones and other focal points. It was something I've never really seen before, but it made for beautiful photography. And there were only a few occasions that we really had need for a polarizer. Otherwise, the light was wonderful. Had a good turnout. I believe there were 19 of us, including David, and we had enough room to spread out on 35 acres so that we weren't tripping over each other. In fact, we hardly saw each other for the most part until we gathered together at the end. But a good trip, one that I think is well worth seeing again.
Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate that. And we also took a trip to the Mechanicsburg the historic town of Mechanicsburg this past Friday. And Norbert, you were there. Can you give us an update on that particular trip?
Yes, I will, Matter. Yeah. We did something a little different. We normally do our trips on a weekend, and we tried a Friday, and because some of the venues that we were going to visit were not available. So the trip committee decided, well, let's give a Friday a shot here. And believe it or not, we had an amazing turnout. About 30 folks showed up, and we all met at the drugstore, the Eccles drugstore, and doing so, the mayor, Jack Ritter, John Klinger, which is the talked about the Frankenberger Museum and Tavern. Tate Yoe, he runs the barbershop, Nider's Barbershop. And Deb McCleary, which is involved at Eccles and the Union Church. And Roger Jumper, of course, with the Jumper Shoes. And Caitlin Lynch, which is a violin teacher and instructor, and she's associated with Scott Heisey's violin shop. Anyway, we all met there, and they all gave us a little rundown about the town of Mechanicsburg. And I can't thank these folks enough for taking their time and welcoming us. I feel that they enjoyed us as much as we enjoyed them. I really do. They were very enthusiastic. Now, I did not go to all the venues. I know I've seen some of the photographs that have been posted, and some really nice work here, really is. So anyway, that's what we did. And like I said, it was a beautiful day, and it was very, very, just lots of fun,
Norbert, did you have the grilled cheese and tomato soup sandwich lunch?
Right, that's right. I had that the grilled cheese, tomato soup there, and a coffee, of course. Okay.
Thank you, Norbert. Appreciate that. Thank you. Upcoming trips, we have on November 18th, on a Saturday, we have the Hershey Zoo. We did this a year or so ago, and we're going to go back again. And Mary Fox will be leading that, and we're going to have a guide from the zoo there with us like we did before. So that should be a lot of fun. And the Trips Committee just had a meeting a week ago, and we got some really cool places we're going to go to. We're going to do the Anderson Mill, Gerhardt Machinery. We're working on an abandoned prison. That'll be a longer trip, and that'll be really cool. We almost have the date nailed down for our state capitol tour that we do, which is just for us, and we can go throughout the whole the Capitol building. And there's some others we have cooking in the hopper, so we'll keep you updated on that. So that's it for the announcements. Tonight, we are so glad to have Les Picker with us. Les Picker is in Havre de Grace, Maryland. That's where he's based, and is a world-renowned, actually, from his work that he's done with Nat Geo, magazine articles in Forbes, Times, Better Homes and Garden, NPR commentator. I mean, I could just go on, an author of many books that he has done, and leading photography trips, and fine art printing is one of his hallmarks. I mean, I attended a session on it, and trust me, if you think Mike Donovan is fussy about a spot, okay, Les Picker would be would meet him dearly, because he is such detail oriented. Tonight, Les is going to talk to us about creating a personal portfolio and why you might want to do that. And Les, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can share your screen and introduce yourself, if you would, please.
Sure. Happy to, Joe. And oops, where are we? Here we go. All right. I just have to get to the beginning here. Can you all hear me? And
we can hear
see
you.
Me?
And we can hear you, and we can see your slides beautifully.
Okay, so before I get going, just a couple of things I want to say. I've known Joe for several years now, and Joe, I'm going to sing your praises back to you, because you are just an incredible photographer. You are such a great teacher, administrator. Your club, I know Dennis is involved, Joe, and the other people that are on your board. I talk to a lot of camera clubs, but I have to say that your club is a shining example of what a camera club can really be and do for its members. So hats off to you guys. Before I just want to say that it's an honor to be here. The one thing I have to ask is that those of you who are wearing a Steelers t-shirt or sweatshirt, or a Philadelphia Eagles t-shirt or sweatshirt, please turn off your video. I'm a Ravens fan, and that's hard on the eyes to see you guys wearing that. So teasing aside, let's get into the meat of the subject here. To start with, we teach portfolio development in our studio. It's a 3-day workshop. Actually, it's coming up this weekend, and we've been doing this for 2 decades. So aside from our fine art printing, which we've been doing quite a bit longer than that, the portfolio development is something that really seems to hit a chord with photographers, and rightfully so. But what I'm going to handle today is, do we really know, or are you really aware of what a portfolio is? We hear a lot about it, but what is a portfolio actually? And then if you think that the ultimate goal is to have a finished, gorgeous portfolio, I'll hold an example up here, then if you think this is the end result, then you're sadly mistaken, because as I'll explain as we go along here, the physical portfolio is the tail end of a long process, which Joe himself has participated in. To get to that product, you have to learn a lot of things about self-editing and so on. So without anything further, let me just get into the topic right off. So my background, I just mentioned to you, my associate Bob Boyer is a master printer, and he's a studio photographer, whereas I am a landscape, wildlife, and cultural photographer. But Bob and I offset each other's skills, and he's, being a master printer, he's quite knowledgeable about putting portfolios together. We both judge print contests and portfolios for people. So whether or not they've taken our workshop, we do one-on-one counseling for that. So let me start with, what is a portfolio? Well, obviously, if you look it up in the dictionary, you're going to see that it's somehow some collection of imagery. But really, what are its purposes? And that's what I want to talk to get started here. First is the whole notion of pride and pleasure. You should be proud and exhibit the pride in your work. But I know for myself, particularly, but I hear it from all the people who participate in our portfolio workshops, that they really draw a lot of pleasure from taking a look at that portfolio. Mind you, a portfolio is really only a marker at the time that you're putting the portfolio together. Hopefully your photography will evolve so that 5 or 10 years in the future, you would do a different portfolio and see how your work has evolved. So we have clients who have had 4 or 5 portfolios that they've done, and it really does show the evolution of their work. It's kind of neat to see. Of course, it's a home decor showpiece. If you have something like this on your coffee table or where else, it's something that's there for people to look at, to pick up, to see your work. And it's also something you can show to family and friends if that's your intent. But getting down to brass tacks, some of you are thinking of a portfolio because you're looking for an editorial assignment from a magazine. Perhaps you're looking for a book contract. Or perhaps you are, let's say, a wedding photographer or a portraitist. Then you might be looking for clients. And there's really nothing that's a better sell, if you will, using the word sell in quotes, for a professional photographer than to have a well-balanced and very professional portfolio. And I'm going to show you examples at the end of this of a range of portfolios, from very simple ones to complex ones. And before I go any further, let me say I'm pretty informal about this. So if you have a question, pop it into the chat. Joe is moderating the chat, and he'll interrupt me with if there's a question that you would like to have answered. I may put it off at that moment because I know I'll be covering it in another slide or two. Also, we've been very successful with our clients getting able to secure gallery exhibits, including solo exhibits. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. There's nothing that a gallerist loves more than to see a potential artist come in who understands the importance of a really good professional portfolio. So why do it? Well, there's an opportunity to assess your body of work. You can look at that time that when you start saying, okay, I'm going to develop a portfolio, it forces you to really assess your body of work that you've done. What works? What hasn't worked? There's all sorts of tips and techniques that we teach to do that. One of which I might add right at the beginning is to do a thorough assessment of your metadata. The people don't think about doing this. What lens do you use mostly? What camera settings are you using mostly? It reveals a lot about the kind of work, where your body of work emphasis really is. A portfolio helps you chart your future directions. Once you have assessed your work, you can think, hey, is this where I'm headed? Is this what I want to be doing? What do I need to do to get to some goal that I want to achieve as a photographer? So portfolio development, not the portfolio itself, but the development of the portfolio really helps to clarify these two issues. I will say, and I perhaps should have put this bullet for last, but Bob and I both feel that learning self-editing, as painful as it is, and we're going to talk more about that too, as painful as it is really one of the most important skills, if not the most important skills. I've talked with Tony Sweet, I've talked with so many other photographers about it, and we all agree that self-editing is so critical for a successful portfolio, but also just for the future of your direction of your work. If done properly, and that's a big if done properly, it teaches you how to work collaboratively. What do I mean? Well, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to develop the portfolio, and I'm not going to need any help with it, etc. We feel that's a really bad mistake. Putting a portfolio together is a chance to really get together with other serious, not just photographers, folks, but artists, whether they be oil painters, artists, or watercolor, or a museum curator. It's a great way to get together collaboratively and get input into what they are seeing for the portfolio, for your portfolio in particular. And obviously, a portfolio is a way to celebrate your passion for photography. And I think most people who decide to do a portfolio are pretty passionate people about their photography. All right, any questions first before I get into some thoughts about this? Okay, let's.
I don't see any questions on chat, so.
Okay. Putting together a portfolio is truly a process. It is not a weekend project. It is not a week-long project. It is not a month-long project. It is a difficult and lengthy project if done properly. And by that, I mean you need to go through, and I'll describe what some of the points that you need to go through, but it is a lengthy process, sometimes very frustrating, but really, really worthwhile in the end. The most important part, as I mentioned before, is the self-editing, really understanding, taking a hard look at your work, deciding which images belong in the portfolio, which don't belong in the portfolio. That's really critically important. As I mentioned before, the portfolio itself is really a secondary product. Let me go back to that. Okay. Yeah, the finished product is secondary. That's the key thing I want to point out. But it should look darn good by the time you finish this process. You want a really professional looking portfolio. Okay, so getting started. Now we're getting some of the nitty-gritty here. Obviously, you have to start with a concept, with a vision. What story are you trying to tell in your portfolio? What are you trying to have viewers understand about your work? What is the portfolio about? Again, what is the storyline? And what are your goals for it? In other words, is it you're putting this portfolio together just to see where you are as a photographer, to really take the time to self-analyze where you are as a photographer so you can chart your future? Or maybe it's you just want to create a coffee table book. That's fine. That's a noble goal in and of itself. Are you looking to get your work in front of editors or publishers? Is that what your goal is? Be honest with yourself. Write down what the goals of this whole portfolio development process is. Are you looking to have gallery shows? Are you looking to have exhibitions? If that's the goal, then not only should you know in advance, but you should also gear your portfolio to meet those goals. So in other words, if you're putting a portfolio so that you can have encourage gallerists to invite you in to display your work, it would be a different portfolio look, perhaps, than a coffee table book for your home. So knowing this in advance really does help. Is it for prospective clients? If, like I said, if you're a studio photographer, you're a portraitist, or you're a wedding photographer, or you're a real estate photographer, and that's a wonderful professional career also, then you put together a portfolio. Some of it will be online, certainly, but in other cases, people love a tangible object to hold, a tangible fine art papers to see your work on. So getting started is more conceptual and understanding what your goals really are. The next step is starting to focus what your portfolio is about. Should it be your best 10 to 20 images that you've ever photographed? In other words, a collection from all over the place. They may have no storyline to them, but you want to showcase your photography skills, the skills that you have. In other words, you want to show your ability to slow water. You want to show your ability to pop clouds. You want to show your ability with backlighting for your portrait clients. We're here to say that that is not really the best portfolio to do, your 10 best or your 20 best. Better yet, have you worked on a project or story? Have you been back to the same place over and over again over the years? Have you been back there season after season? Something like that not only tells a better story, but it allows you to still demonstrate all your photographic skills. So that is something that you should consider in making your portfolio a bit more concise. Let me give you an example. We had a client come to us that wanted to focus on African wildlife because this person had been to Africa multiple times. That was a very diverse and very fractured portfolio that he had thought he would end up doing by showing us the images that he was thinking of. Better yet, as I mentioned here, he was particularly drawn to elephants, and he wanted to tell a story of elephants in the Serengeti. And that, by doing that, by focusing it down, he was able to show every skill that he had, his ability to use wide-angle lens with wildlife, his ability to have clouds popping in the background as a column of elephants marched by, every bit of his technical expertise shine through in that portfolio. So think about that as you go about thinking of a portfolio. How can you focus it to really tell a story that draws the reader in? The viewer, I mean, in. I'm thinking in terms of my novel writing, sorry. So therefore, cohesion, as my point is, tends to be more powerful. We look to having a cohesive portfolio tends to have better reactions, particularly for gallerists, particularly for editors. They can see how you can tell a story. That's the key thing, not just helter-skelter throwing images together. You have to be able to tell a story. And that's certainly when I worked for Nat Geo on certain projects, that was the key thing. What is the story, Les? What is the story you're trying to tell? Or here's the story that the writer wrote. How are you going to show that in images? And that's a key point. There are images that we all love. I'll come in, I love an image because I was there. I knew what it took to take it. And then Bob comes in and says, oh, that image is really pretty crappy. So you never know. But it may be that the image is good. It is good. And even my associate Bob will tell me, oh, yeah, that's pretty good, Les. But it doesn't fit that portfolio. Put it aside. Create a folder on your computer or in your Lightroom or wherever, Photoshop, that saves some of those images for potential portfolios later. But part of the self-editing is the painful process of saying, damn, I love that image, but I'm going to take it out because it doesn't really belong in this case. Okay, so let's go to the nitty-gritty part and talk about how we go from the initial steps to the later steps and so on in developing a portfolio. Before I get going, Joe, anything that folks want to know about?
There's two questions that came up. Janice, if you're there, can you unmute yourself and ask Les your question, please? Janice
It might be
asked,
easier. Yeah, just read it out.
Yeah,
Just read
Janice asked a question about how can the coffee table book versus in front of front of a book for a publisher, how can it be different? The coffee table version versus a portfolio that you present in front of a publisher, as an example.
Okay, good. That's a very good question. The goals of the two are really quite different. One is perhaps entertainment for folks. And a good example may be you took a trip to Cuba, or you took wherever you recently took a trip, and you want something that that your family and friends and even yourself to remind you of that wonderful trip. The idea there is to entertain, engage the viewer in that sense. So while of course you want to make sure that number one, everything is well composed. Number two, the things that should be tack sharp are tack sharp. Number three, you print it carefully. And number four, you do it on good archival paper. So, and also, I mean, you take good care of the prints once they're done, but that's a whole separate topic and a whole separate conversation. That would differ significantly from a portfolio that you're putting together for getting your first magazine assignment. And we have this, by the way. We have one of our folks was Jeff Wagner was retiring from a very successful career with Ford Motor Company, but he wanted to do professional photography. He developed a portfolio. The very first editor that he showed it to, that he just thought would never agree to give him an assignment, he got his first editorial assignment. We've had several folks get their first solo gallery exhibition as a result of a portfolio. And Joe, you know one of them, Lou Rothman. right? So Lou not only got solo exhibitions from his portfolio, but 2 book contracts. So those portfolios tend to be much more focused. They show an ability to tell a story, and every print is carefully considered and vetted before it makes it into the portfolio. And a portfolio like that would be very concise, 10, maybe 12 images. That's all it takes. We have a quote from a New York gallerist. It was really good. He said, if you can't tell me your story in 10 images, you can't tell me that story no matter how many images you have. And we thought that was a really good way to look at it, because they're looking at it from a sales perspective and so on. Does that answer your question, Janet?
Yes, and it sounds like it is a difference between here's a bunch of beautiful photos versus here's what I can do. Here's the best of what I can do.
Yes, the best of what you can do within the context of telling the story.
Sorry, I'm trying to tell. Right.
Somehow the images have a linkage. They have they're attached to a central concept. Let's put it that way.
Got it. Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Very helpful.
You're welcome, Janice. What else, Joe?
There was another question, but I think you answered it in the context of developing a story, and that was the question. And
Okay.
I think you answered that in spades.
Okay, well, let me go on to initial steps then, all right? And
Okay.
again, stop with any questions you have. So the first thing is, like I said before, but I want to emphasize, is it takes time to do a successful portfolio. There's the initial idea of developing a concept, understanding what your goals are for it. But then once you start putting your images together, potential images, then comes the idea of culling them. Which ones don't belong? Which ones are repetitive? And which of those 2 should I put aside? Do not ever in a portfolio put repetitive images. There's no point. What are you trying to do for the viewer? To convince them that you can take that same shot? No. Ties your portfolio together. So creating a successful portfolio takes a lot of effort in terms of time to review, to let it sit for a while, and then go back to it and make decisions about what belongs and what doesn't. Portfolios if you have 25 prints, that is a lot that you're asking an editor or a friend or to look at. What's the worst thing that we all face is when someone comes over to you and says, oh, would you here, take a look at my photos, right? I'm sure some of you cringe when that happens. So I think that the same thing is even doubly true with prints, because it takes effort to pull the print out of the box and then look at it. And they see a stack like that, it's going to really be a turnoff. And especially if you're looking to professionalize your portfolio. If you want to sell to a gallery, get a gallery to sponsor you, if you want an editorial assignment, these folks are trained, men and women, highly trained in what works and doesn't work. They'll know after 5, 6, or 10 images. They don't need 25 to go through. All right. Key thing here, folks. This is so crucial. Get together with some 3 or 4. That's all it takes. Just 3 or 4 other artists who you really like their work, you respect their how do I want to say, seriousness about photography. You like the way they teach or communicate their passion. Find 3 or 4 people like that and say, hey, you want to get together and let's talk about our photography. It's not only you asking for their input, but they'll get your input. And you'll form like this beautiful, intimate cabal, if you will, of people who really will give you honest and helpful critique, not criticism, critique. They're going to give you their opinions on what they think will work, given your goals. Given your goals, will this work or will that work? And this doesn't work, and that's really important. Share your vision with them, and please understand theirs. This is a give and take. This will only work if it's a mutual benefit to all of you, and you can celebrate each other's victories. The first assignment you get from a magazine, the first time a gallery said, "Yeah, I'll put up 2 or 3 of your images." That success should be celebrated, and that comes from sharing your vision with them. When you start putting your portfolio together, and we do this with our portfolio workshop, which we offer usually once a year, but sometime next year the demand's been very high for it, so we limit it to 4 people. Only 4 people at a time for the entire weekend. And we start by saying, you're going to give us your 50 candidates. And then Bob and I spend about 2 hours together with each candidate, with each candidate's selections. So you should start with 40 or 50 that you feel are somehow attached to your theme that vision that I was talking about. Once that's done, share that selection with your group. Ask them for feedback. Does the content tie together? Is there enough drama in the images that'll capture capture your audience, your intended audience? Does the sequencing of the images work? Do you think, are they sequenced properly? Maybe I should change this or that. So these are, the next thing you do is you share this larger collection with your group. Please, 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 don't defend yourself when they give you feedback. That's not what this is for. Listen, ask them questions. Okay, I see your point, but I'm curious, why do you think it doesn't belong with these others? Get their input, write it down. I always carry my pad with me, and I'll write down what people feed back to me. Listen. That's the key point. Stop talking. At this point, you're showing them this work and you want feedback. Once that happens, go back and color your images. Knock out, if you started with 50, knock out 20 of them. Based on their feedback, you're going to think about it. What I like to do is once I go to print, we're going to talk about this in a minute, printing small little copies of each image, I write on the back what people didn't like about it, and that gives me good thinking ability to think as I'm looking at it. I like that. What did they say? Oh, whoa! I can see their point now. It's duplicative of this other one, and now I have to make a choice which one stays and which one goes. Ask them, am I on the right track? And then once you do that, knock another 5 or 10, maybe even 15 out of that 30. So you're down to 10 or 15 images. And again, the fewer, the better. Within the context. I mean, you don't want to show someone a portfolio of 4 images, but you don't want to also show them a portfolio of 20 images. So 10 to 15 is the sort of the sweet spot for people to look at, even friends or family. Here's an example in one of our workshops, in the portfolio workshop, where people are getting each other's comments on how it will look and so on and so forth. This is in our studio. Okay, final steps. Here's what I recommend. Print small version of your final group, the 10, 15, 20 that you are considered final or semi-finals. Spread them out on a table or floor, whatever room you have, and then see how it tells your story. See how you're sequencing it, how you're going to design it. Now, what do I mean by design? I want to explain something very quickly about it. Try not to mix horizontal and vertical images in the same portfolio. The worst thing you can do is ask a person to who's looking at 10 images this way to turn the portfolio the other way. It's disconcerting, and certainly editors and gallerists don't want to have to do that. So what we recommend is, if you're going to do a horizontal portfolio, for example, you put 2 verticals on 1 page. So it's a design element, we call it. The verticals won't take up the full 13 by 19 or 8.5 by 11, but you'll have your design will make it easier for the viewer. And that's what I just talked about. Be judicious with that. Then once you're done with it, let it sit for a while. Go back, reassess, do the thing again. Go back to your group maybe if it's convenient, and see what they think of it. And you can do some of this by Zoom. You can send them your finals and with the sequence that you would like, and get their comments on by that on Zoom too. Then share the final with them and ask them whether it truly achieves the goals. It's still not too late. You have not committed it now to your fine art papers at that point, but see if it achieves the goal. And the key thing I want to say, and Joe alluded to it when he introduced me, really commit to excellence. This is your art. Don't have water drops on your prints or anything that would take away from the print. Don't make sure, put it aside, tear it up, whatever you're going to do, but make sure that every print that's in your portfolio meets your highest standards, and ask people if indeed it does. And here's an example for a portfolio I was working on. These are tiny prints. Do I have a picture of it? Yeah, you can see the size of them. I just take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and I print 2 prints on it, and cut it in half. And then I spread it out on the table, and I start fiddling with them. And I'll ask Bob for his opinion. I'll ask other photographers who come into my studio or who I work with a lot, and come in, and I say, hey, give me your honest opinion about this. What works, what doesn't work here. Okay, so this is very helpful. Do when you get down to your final 15 or 20, do small prints of them. They can even be smaller than this. Sometimes I do that. So I want to end, not end, because I have a whole other section. I want to show you portfolios. Clay Scheinfeld was the editor of many magazines. He's from the University of Wisconsin, and I knew him in his senior years. I still miss him, but he said this, which I love this quote. So you have to take that in the smiling way that he meant it. But the truth is that people get very serious about editing the other person's work, and my sort of prayer for you is that you'll get a group of 3 or 4 other photographers that really are passionate about helping you edit your work. Another good quote. Bob and I were trying to look at who said it. We haven't found it, but we had it. Bob had it written down, so we're going to look for who actually said this. Okay. So I want to show you, when we talk about portfolios, and by the way, what you're looking at now is the kind of portfolio that these are handmade individually in the United States. Everything is wood. There is no cardboard in here. It's all a wood portfolio. I'm happy and proud to say that Joe has developed one here in our studio, and really done an absolutely gorgeous job with his work, which we'll look at in just a moment. Well, I mean, just an allusion to it. But at any event, make it look professional so that people can, that you show it to, whether it be family and friends or gallerists, will appreciate it. I should mention, Joe, that I've written a book called The Art of the Gallery Show, on how photographers can improve their chances of getting a gallery show. So if you're interested, you can go to my website and find it.
Les, on that one, can you send us the linkage to it so we could put that into the email tomorrow going
course.
out to the members? That would be great.
Okay. Will do, Joe.
Yeah.
So this was a Canadian landscape, for example, just to show you that, there's you should have a title page, you should have your credit, because sometimes a gallerist or an editor will say, can I hold on to this for a few days? And you want to make sure that it doesn't get mixed up with other people's work, because they need to show it to some decision maker perhaps, or to the co-owner of the gallery. So be prepared for that. And one of the ways is to have this. We firmly believe, but you don't have to agree to this. We firmly believe that you should not have any writing on your prints in a portfolio, on the print itself, because you want it to stand alone. If you're showing it to someone, they know they're talking to Joe Blow, and they want to know, they know each print's going to be from that person, and you've given them a title page, etc. So they don't need to see your name on every page. It's only distracting them. Let them see the image itself. So let's start with the simplest. This is an example of a very simplified portfolio. And this might work if you're using it mostly for family kinds of things. It works by, I thought I had a picture of it, I'm sorry. It unfolds in the back, and there's a little slot here for your key photo. And you just open up the back, take out the images, and you can show someone. This would be perfect for a trip that you've just taken, or that you're trying to show someone, or for whatever, for a number of reasons. Just a very, very simple portfolio, and these are available online. It's not any secret on these, and it comes in different colors too. Then there are larger ones with a similar concept. This one is sold by Moab Paper. If you go to moabpaper.com, you'll find that they sell a larger, in different sizes, 8.5 by 11. This is 13 by 19, and it's a simple fold. It works very well, especially with editors. If you're looking for a magazine assignment or a newspaper assignment, this is very convenient, because the editor can get right into it and do whatever they want to make a decision. They can spread it out on the table, whatever. It's easy to access, is what I mean. Then there's this kind of portfolio. This is from also available through Moab Paper, but it's sold online on Amazon too. It's a composite material, a very hard sort of plastic. I think it has carbon fiber in it, so that makes the pricing of it a little bit more, but it's not terribly expensive. It's around $100, maybe 89, I forget. But you put your images into it, and here are the advantages: is that you actually put your image on this strip, if you will. It adheres to the back of your print, so it does not obscure your print whatsoever. And by doing that, it allows you to even have two prints to create a panel. It's a very simple approach to a portfolio. The drawback, if you will, is that the prints cannot be separated. Once they're into this portfolio, you would have to leave the whole portfolio with someone, but it's perfect for use in the home. It's perfect for to show a variety of people, including newspaper work. And of course, a lot of times in newspaper work, you want to be in black and white, but not always. It can also be color. So it's a simple portfolio, but it works, and it works pretty well. Then you have boxed portfolios, what they call portfolio boxes. They're archival boxes. People call them archival boxes, but it's a convenient way to store prints or to show a gallerist because they can lift the print out and see the paper that you're using. They can say, wow, you know, what kind of paper are you planning to use for a gallery show? And you can discuss it with them. What do you find is the most saleable? What do your folks like? What do your clients like, et cetera, et cetera. But you can, it's a talking point, but everything comes out, and it's a convenient way to show, if you will, a portfolio loosely defined. I don't know who this guy is, but somehow he ended up in our studio. And this is a beautiful portfolio of various things in Africa, including landscapes, animals, but done in such with Joe's panache is all I can say. And here he is at the end of the portfolio, showing it to the other three members and to Bob and I, showcasing the work, and that is on Moab. It's Entrada, isn't it, Joe?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's on Entrada paper, but you know, look at the quality of those prints and the way Joe composed it and post-processed it. It's just simply gorgeous. So by having this is what you would bring to a gallerist, for example, and show them what the kind of work that you can do and he or she can expect. We also put and you might think about putting a vellum sheet on top of each image. That way you can have the title of the image and your name, if you wish, on the lower right or lower left. And this is a graded image so that it only will fit on top of the print that it's designed for. It's kind of a neat thing, and we've gotten a lot of good reaction to it from gallery owners and editors who really appreciate this. We had one client sell a bunch of his images to an office, to a consulting office near DC, based on his presentation. So anyway, we also have, this is Lou Rothman that we talked about. Did Lou speak to your club, Joe?
No.
Okay.
No.
He spoke for MPA, Maryland Photographic Alliance. But Joe, what Lou did, he's a retired radiologist, is he's been photographing New York. New York City is basically his whole life. So he made a small portfolio. The title is here, so it can stand in a bookshelf. And oops, I had it upside down. And the lead photo is on the front cover, but inside is his portfolio, and with all his images of New York City, many of them award-winning. And as you can see here, if I can get to it quickly, I'm holding it up sideways, a little hard. So he has a title of his image here on the vellum sheet, and then the actual image is right below it. So can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. Yes.
So so that is another way of showcasing your image for whatever purpose you might have. And that's it. I don't know if there are any other questions, but you know, it's a process. I wish you all the absolute best of luck on it. And if you decide to get into it, but please form a group that you can really depend on, and you can offer what you have to offer to them while they give you what they have.
Les, a couple questions came in. One of them is, if somebody was on an Africa trip and they took 1,500, let's say they took 3,000 pictures, and they want to make a photo book, and they're bound and determined to put 150 pictures in a photo book, how would you approach that? A photo book that was going to be on your coffee table, how would you approach that in terms of the number of images that you might want to put in there?
Oh boy, that's really a good question. I have Salgado's book in my in my in my library room in my studio, and I probably read his book 4, 5, 6 times a year. Not read it, but look through his images and read his descriptions of how he got it and so on. I love his work. So, but I don't think anyone would sit down and look through those 100 images he has in there in one sitting. You have to think about your viewer. How many people will sit down and if that's the goal, is to have them look at so many images, and then you kind of take it as a personal insult when they've looked through 10, 15, 20 of the images and they say, oh, wow, this is really nice. They thumb through a few others and then give it back to you. It's kind of a setup, but I think if you're going to, by the way, 3,000 images on a trip to Africa is probably a low ball estimate for what people actually come back with. Anyway, but so, and I always wonder, how are people going to post-process, make a decision on which ones they're going to work on, which ones they're not. However, it does happen. So you have to eventually cull it down to a certain number for a book. I can give you some suggestions for a book. Books work best when they have subdivisions in them, so that you're looking at, I don't know how you would divide it, but it might be Tanzania and Kenya and Uganda, or it might be elephants, lions, and whatever. It could, however you're going to divide it, it helps the reader do their cognitive organizing by seeing what each subcategory is. But in a book, I mean, if you're going to produce it yourself, you're going to be limited by how much money you have, because printing a photo book is expensive. If to be done right, on the right kind of paper, and to be able to get the dynamic range that you want and the Dmax that you want, it's going to take some money. If someone else publishes it, they're going to hammer you like you have never experienced before to get it down to the size that they are comfortable with printing, and that varies from publisher to publisher. But go to Barnes and Noble and take a look at the photo section. I think you'll be surprised at how few of the photo books have 100 or more images in it. Yes, the big names absolutely will have a lot of imagery in it, but the majority of the books will be, I don't mean how-to books, but the artistic photography books will have not as many images as you might think in it. Go there and count it, you'll see.
Another question: should you mix up color and black and white in a portfolio?
No, that's the fastest answer I can give you.
Okay.
It really doesn't work. We advise people make 2 separate portfolios. That's fine. Ask an editor, do you prefer your photographer's work in color or black and white? And if they say, well, it doesn't really matter, then what I would suggest is you put in 10 images of color separated separated in some way that it's obvious, and then they can see 10 images in black and white.
Okay.
But don't mix them in the same. It's very jarring to the eyes. And Joe, I don't know if you know this, but people spend 3 times, this has been researched, I'm reporting on research. Research has found that people spend 3 times as much time looking at a black and white photograph than they do a color. Can you imagine that? But it sort of seems like it would be the opposite, but it's not, because we see the world every single minute of every day that we're awake in color. So we grok it, we understand it. When you look at something in black and white, you have to decode what you're looking at. You have to invest some time in that image. And even though it's, but like I said, they 3 times as much. So you don't want that jarring experience of them going from color to black and white and then back again to color, do your colors, do your black and whites. We find that that's more effective. That's our opinion. Other people might differ.
Les, George had a question. Who, in your opinion, produces the best quality photo books?
Oh my God, I have to look at the publishers. Can I just walk away for a moment and
Sure.
grab a book to give you
Yep.
an example?
This has been very interesting to me, and to me for sure, in terms of how you approach it.
We have a lot of photographers who would make wonderful books. Dennis, you're one, and I'd love to see yours, Joe, someday.
Okay, so oh God, this is a this is a handful. This is Sebastião Salgado's book, The Genesis, which please go buy it. I got mine used because it's $100 and some odd for it to be new. But in the back of the book, and make sure if you buy it used, it includes it. Salgado has included a description of every photo in the book and how it was taken and so on. But this book is like an amazing. Oh, it's so heavy. I'm serious. It's all black and white. His work is in black and white, and this is the first book that he produced with digital work. This is like a milestone book. He's always shot film, large format film, but he's using digital for this book. Another book that's by Taschen Press, Taschen. They're an excellent publisher. And then, do you guys know Nick Brandt? Have you seen his work? If you're into wildlife photography, I surely recommend Nick Brandt's. Wait, I've got this cover on, which is giving you glare. But Nick Brandt does a lot of his wildlife work in wide format. So he uses wide angle lenses, and he does incredible work. So if you have a chance to get some of his stuff, and again, he shoots in black and white also. So a shot like this, right? Whoop, the wrong way. So this book is full of some wonderful work, and that's what I encourage. I mean, I always encourage photographers to buy some books and experiment, finding out, getting some inspiration from other photographers. Sometimes it's depressing, but but a lot of the times it's very inspiring.
Les, this has been an excellent presentation. I've really learned a lot and enjoyed it myself personally. So before we, any other questions we want to ask Les, if you could just unmute yourself and just ask them, that would be great.
Hey, Les, this is Dave Marchetto. Just a wonderful presentation, Les. Really awesome. As I try to get my head around the concept of a portfolio, and I don't have one, I think of a resume, and having a lot of experience actually with, developing resumes. Almost always in my day, it went with a cover letter, something that was introductory and sort of informative about the person, and it was kind of attached. Is that something that sort of fits into what you do? I mean, if you're going to leave something, do you have a calling card of sorts as a cover letter or not?
Excellent question, David. Thank you for asking it, because I did neglect to mention it in my talk. This is the title for that Canada portfolio that you saw of mine. On the back of the title page, we have each participant write their story, not their bio. We don't want the bio there. This is not a bravado thing on your chest, how great a photographer I am. The work's going to tell people how great a photographer you are, or whatever it is you want to show. And I don't have to be necessarily a great photographer, maybe for family, but you should at least let people know what it is that you tried to accomplish in this. Maybe include some of the hardships you went through to get it. That's fine. But limit it to what they're looking at in the portfolio. You can put in an extra resume, nothing wrong with that, included with your so to speak, cover letter to have an appointment with your, if I'm going to go to an editor, I'll say, I'd like to have some time with you to show you my portfolio. And I'll say, here's my experience in photography. And I call it my brief bio. So I give them a bio there. So it's similar in this. We want the portfolio to speak for itself, but let people know what you were trying to accomplish, what the portfolio is about. That's important.
Oh, thanks so much. Just another dimension yet to the complexity, I think, of what you so nicely rolled out for us this evening. Thanks, Les.
Yeah, and just one other thing I want to say about this, Dave, is that we ask people to think about this before coming to the portfolio workshop. In other words, we actually start the portfolio workshop 2 months prior to them appearing in our workshop. This, for example, is Friday. But that is not just involving the photos, the images, but once we get to that culling stage and they're ready to come here with 30 or fewer images, they appear at the workshop with those to discuss collegially with the participants and with Bob and I. We also ask them to start thinking about what's going to be on the back of that. What's the story that they're going to tell? And then we offer editing help on it, but in particular, we want them to understand this is not a bio, it is a part of the story that they're telling. Make it brief and let people get into your work. They'll come back to it. We've seen that time and time again where a reviewer will go through it and say, oh my God, this is good stuff. And then they go back to the back of the title page to see more about that photographer.
Les, 2 questions came up. Do you have any insight as to who would produce, what commercial company would produce a photo book would be the best quality, like Blurb, Snapfish, Shutterfly? Do you have any insight into that?
We don't like any of them, to be perfectly honest. Not for a professional portfolio or photo book. I think they're fine for if you have a trip. That I think that would be great. You're going to Africa, yeah, do a book on it, make multiple copies, especially to give to. I have to make lots of copies. I've got 9 grandchildren, so I've got to make a bunch of copies. So use those places for that. Learn how to use their software so you can develop have it styled as well as you possibly can, but then you have to go to, and I'm forgetting now in Pennsylvania, forget the name of the company now. I don't know why. Okay. But at any event, there are companies that specialize in photographic books, but they're expensive to produce.
And do you recommend glossy, matte, or luster or paper?
All right, another very good question. We stay away from glossy. We feel that it presents a number of issues, including glare when people start looking at it, and 99% of the people who are going to look at it are going to look at it in the wrong light. Only when you get to a gallery or to a really good, like when I used to work with Time Life, we would have studios where you bring your work. It wasn't in the editor's office. You go next door or a common room where you'd show your stuff. And that lighting was the right way, the right lighting, daylight lighting. So glossy tends to present problems with that. As people, you know, I'm serious. We look at this. People are looking like this and tilting the thing the right way. So we recommend either a semi-gloss or satin, if you will, it's called, like Moab juniper or Hahnemuhl's semis. They have a series of semi-gloss papers, or matte paper, depending upon the work. I mean, if it's a fine art work, matte tends to work pretty well, but so does a very modest semi-gloss or satin.
Thank you. Any other final questions for Les before we sign off? Les?
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, guys. And Joe, it's always a pleasure working with you.
Well, thank you, Les. And before we sign off, I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves if they could, please. And if you could give Les a round of applause. And no, this is what we do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Les.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
And any comments in chat would be appreciated also for Les. And Les, thank you so much for doing this tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciated it.
Yep. Thanks, Les.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
You too.
Thank you, Les. Take care.
Here. Okay. I'll leave you guys to your own devices.
Okay.
Okay, well, Joe, thanks for making the arrangements for that program. That was interesting.
That was interesting. Okay,
And,
so
do I remember correctly that Les did not charge us for that presentation?
that's right.
Yeah, very nice.
You did not. So, okay, I see there's Richard there. Are you down? Where are you now, Mr. Richard?
I am in the very cold temperatures here in Florida, Lago, Florida, of 84. So
Oh, you poor thing, Richard.
it is. It's suffering. Yeah, it's hard to even get up in the morning and go out and shoot photographs. Yeah. So it's good. It's good down here. A number of the birds are migrating. Seeing a lot of roseate spoonbills lately here.
They're
Yeah.
beautiful.
They're gorgeous birds. So.
Okay. Well, thank you much. Dennis, do we have the recording turned off?
No.